Good morning. So those of you that know me, Deepak was a student of mine at Maryland, know that I show up with 10 times more content than I have time. So yesterday, Rohit was at our offices for an AI conference. And I said, Rohit, you've given me 15 minutes. I've got about 2 hours worth of content. And he said, no problem. Just take 15 minutes from Charles Mann's panel. It's okay. With one condition, you have to beat him in arm wrestling. So Charles, I'm ready, bud. I'm ready. I mean, I've been practicing all week for this. Anyone want to take side bets on that? It's already set up on FanDuel, and it's like 900 to 1 chances for Charles. But here's what I will do. Anybody, if you get frustrated when you attend the speech and the speaker doesn't get to all of the slides, get me your card before I leave around 11:45-ish, because I got to head out to Western Maryland, and I'll get you the full deck next week when I get back to the office. So I don't want anybody to feel like they didn't get the full content. I love talking about this subject, and I could talk about it for hours, and I recognize that I've got time limits, and you have amazing speakers to follow. So let me go ahead and just dwell on my bio for 10 minutes or so. No, I'm kidding. My secretary puts that slide in there whether I ask for it or not. I want to get to the gut of the program. The gut of the program is around inflection points and how they tie to harvesting intangible assets. So this is like set the stage for the whole day slide. The set the stage for the whole day slide is what happens to an organization or an enterprise when it falls into an inflection point. And the reminder of the chart is inflection points can be on a positive side or on the downside. And I work primarily with CEOs or general counsels, and I can tell you that when a company or an organization, it doesn't have to be a traditional growing tech company. It could be a university. It could be a football team. It could be any organization grows and declines. I mean, it's a natural evolution. And when that inflection point happens, which is why Rohit's agenda for the day makes so much sense to me, it's how do the leaders react? Do they sit like DITH syndrome, which I think I've got in there, or I forgot it, but it's deer in the headlights, and literally wait for the truck to hit them? Or do they have the courage to make a decision to step right or step left? And I've seen too many organizations fall into this frozen state of unwilling to make decisions because they're frozen in time, and that doesn't end well for the deer. I've seen other organizations that can't distinguish between activity and results. So the company goes through a lot of transformations and hires Boehner McKinsey, with all due respect to anybody here from Boehner McKinsey, and there's a lot of moving around and money spent, and at the end of the day, the company has not moved even 3 feet. There's a saying that my son and I learned when we went on our annual fishing trip to Canada. We had a great fishing guide, and he had this great line: don't leave fish to find fish. If you're in a fishing spot that's working, why leave it unless you don't like catching fish, which is one of my favorite things to do. Same thing happens here. I won't go through all of these points, although BSO syndrome is one of my favorite made-up words, bright, shiny object. There's a lot of bright, shiny object that happens when a company's at an inflection point. But my message to you in the short time I have is, how about during an inflection point, getting up off your rear end from the sofa, lifting up the sofa cushion, and yes, there will be all kinds of surprises. If you have little kids, there will definitely be Cheerios under there. There will be some unuseful assets, but there will also be coins. Coins under the sofa cushion is the theme of what to do at this inflection point. Many leaders, the majority percentage of leaders, will look to something new when actually the solutions to maximize revenue, create new opportunities, enter new markets are embedded right there under your rear end, under the sofa cushion. But if the company's too lazy or the leadership is too blinded or they're going through what I call emperor's new quota syndrome, everyone around them is saying, oh, we're so great. All we got to do is incrementally change this. I don't know. What if the assets are right there? And the problem is you're not managing those assets. It's ironic. Many of you have worked at Fortune 500 companies. They can tell you exactly how many desks they have and chairs they have and laptops they have. Don't worry, I won't take it. No, I might actually. They'll tell you what the physical equipment looks like, but they have no inventory, no IAM process, intangible asset management process on their processes, their systems, their distribution channels, all the things that don't show up on the balance sheet. We're still living in a 1950s era when it comes to accounting. I mean, just look at some of the publicly held companies. I mean, it's been a bad couple of days, but still, the prices relative to the physical assets on their balance sheet are incredible. I mean, NVIDIA hit the $4 trillion mark. Let's just hypothesize. How many physical assets does NVIDIA have? I mean, 500 billion? I mean, that's a lot of servers, right? It's a lot of desks and chairs. Let's just say, for discussion purposes, it's 500 billion. That leaves $3.5 trillion of enterprise value unaccounted for on the balance sheet, except for, of course, goodwill. Like in 1986, I was working on a small transaction, and the night before closing, the assets kept only adding up to $490,000, and the purchase price was $500,000. And I was freaking out. I was like, this is malpractice. I'm never going to practice law again. We're committing fraud for $10,000. And I came in at 7 o'clock the next morning, and I'm really sweating, and the senior partner says, oh, just put a line item on Exhibit A called Goodwill. And I said, like Goodwill Industries, the people that come by and pick up your clothes and stuff? He said, no, Goodwill. And I had never heard of the word before, other than in the context of charitable giving. Now, okay, so that's $10,000 for brand and reputation and culture and leadership and channels and customer data, however customer data they had in 1986. Now, these assets make up the lion's share of the enterprise value. So let's look at the data real quick, right? I mean, very, very fast. These are just, and you'll get these if you want them, these are just all the categories of assets you won't find on the balance sheet. But I want to get to the slide. So back in 1975, roughly around the time of my bar mitzvah, which, you know, may be more important of a date to me than to you, these were the percentages in various industries. I mean, look at utilities. Go, intangible assets as a percentage of market cap back then were almost zero. Today, utilities are among the hottest stocks in the stock market with all kinds of intangible value because, surprise, surprise, this phenomenon of AI can't run without data centers, and data centers can't run without power. And there's already concerns about will there be enough power and what are the interim steps. So industries are transforming, but the slide that really grabs me by the leg, is this one. Back in 75, the typical ratio of assets of tangible to intangible was about 17%. And that sounds about right based on that small acquisition I did in 86. It was a rounding error. Goodwill was the thing you'd put on the list of assets when you can't figure out where the other assets go. But 2024, we're at 88 to 12. You can't round error 88% of the intangible value of an enterprise. And for many small or mid-sized tech companies, that number is much higher. I mean, think about post-COVID, virtual workforces, smaller office spaces. I mean, how much physical assets does a typical company even have? So it's incumbent on you as leaders to take inventory, to say, what are my intangible assets? What are the company's intangible assets? And by the way, if you're here as CEO of the company, you may have no freaking clue what your intangible assets are. You know why? Because you're not in the trenches. Ask the people in the trenches. Ask the rest of the C-suite, like you've designed the program. Ask the people in the mailroom, in the sales organization, in the engineering organization. Do you know how many assets get part of the way? If you've been in big corporate America, you know this happens all the time. Projects get developed, they're halfway done, they're 3/4 of the way done. There's a change in leadership. Just this morning, it was announced Doug McMillon stepping down from Walmart and new guys coming in. I've done work for Walmart. That's a $600-700 billion enterprise. I used to go down to Bentonville like a kid in a candy store. Just, oh my God, look at that intangible asset. Look at that intangible asset. Look at their distribution channel. Look at their supply chain. Oh my God, we could create, millions of dollars of new revenue. At one time in a strategic planning meeting in Bentonville, I even said, if we did X, we could create 30, 50, $100 million in fresh revenue. And you know what the Walmart senior VP did? He just laughed. He's like, dude, that's like a fly on an elephant's rear end. I mean, we get excited when the number begins with a B. I said, but still, from a shareholder value perspective, from a fiduciary duty perspective, you don't just leave hundreds of millions of dollars on the table. And oh, by the way, if you're not interested, somebody else might be. There are entrepreneurs that would love to step into an already developed, already existing opportunity and make a supply chain management consulting company out of it, or supply chain software company out of it. Hi. You're just saying hi, right? That doesn't mean actually 5 minutes. Yeah, I thought you were just being friendly. All right, let me show you a couple more slides because I got to make sure we have enough internet capacity to send the decks to everybody that gives me their business cards for this. I'll check with the firm. 40 trillion is the ballpark number. There's no way to really put a number on this because you have to add in universities, government agencies, all this DOGE stuff and government closings up. No matter where you are politically, you've got to understand that the amount of R&D dollars that we spend as taxpayers relative to the yield is embarrassing. It's almost disgusting. I mean, you wonder, why are we not as competitive as we could be with China or India or other developing nations that are better at managing their technologies? Because we waste our food, we waste our resources, and we waste our intangible assets. This is the predicted amount of waste, of stuff that gets discarded, orphaned, abandoned, never leveraged. Is there anybody in this room that wouldn't like in on the 40 trillion that gets thrown in the trash? And since I've only got 5 minutes, I'm going to skip the slide like 72 of my deck. Do you know what my favorite example to this day is of this? You're going to laugh. The donut holes, the Dunkin' Munchkins. I mean, it may seem silly at first, but spend a minute thinking about Dunkin' Munchkin. The Dunkin' Munchkin, for years, if you watched a donut making machine, was the hole that fell in the trash that the guys went out. And finally, the guy said, why are we leaving this much donut, which, I could relate to, on the floor? People will buy those little buggers. And so they started selling them. And by the way, what do you think the profit margin is on a Dunkin' Munchkin? Pretty good, since it was trash before. What's the Dunkin' Munchkin in your organization? I will bet you $100. No, Charles, make it $1,000. Because Charles is in with me on this bet. Don't worry, we're going to win. I will bet you $1,000 that every one of you has multiple Dunkin' Munchkins in your company. I don't care what the size of the company is. Peace to you too. Peace out. Peace out, sister. 2 minutes. All right. I think I've got the internet capacity to send this deck to anybody who wants it. Let me scare you with just a few more data points and then I'm done because I don't feel good about beating Charles in arm wrestling. This is a scary number. It's probably higher than this now. If we were doing better allocating the money that go to universities, go to NIH on overall R&D spending. Stanford is the best in the country. Stanford leverages about 5% of their R&D dollars into income streams. University of Maryland, where you know I'm a big Terp, 0.75%. So think about that. For every $100 spent by the University of Maryland, and I'm on tape, it yields 75 cents. That's embarrassing. Like, we can do better. And if I'm an entrepreneurial company and you're going to waste, 99.25 cents out of every research dollar, like, let me in. Where are the forums that get entrepreneurs together with university professors and say, hey, if you're too busy being an academic, that's cool, but we'll leverage your technology. We'll create incomes. I know Stellar would like to look at a couple of those opportunities. Am I wrong? Yeah, big thumbs up. So my message today is about intangible assets and inflection points. An inflection point is not a time to engage in bright shiny object syndrome or deer in the headlight syndrome or hamster on a wheel. It's not a time to just spend a bunch of money on expensive consultants. It's a time to look within. It's a time to look within and say, what assets do we have as an enterprise that could create new revenue, new markets, new opportunities? And here's the cool part. The assets already exist. They're just under your bum, on the sofa, under the cushion. I'm out of time. Peace to you. And I guess questions will be via email. Back to Rohit. Charles will delay the arm wrestling, and I'm going to keep your time intact. Thank you very much.